A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. I'm Ritwika Gupta. As businesses and economies become increasingly interconnected, the demand for skilled talent across borders has never been higher. Today we'll be putting the spotlight on BorderPlus, a new age talent mobility platform focused on enabling Indian professionals to build international careers. From bridging gaps in traditional migration pipelines to building end-to-end solutions, I'll be in conversation with Mayank Kumar, co-founder of BorderPlus, to discuss how the platform is reshaping global talent mobility. Mayank, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me for this show.
So BorderPlus is positioned as a mission-driven global talent mobility platform. What were the key gaps in the traditional migration pipeline that you set out to solve?
Ritwika, look, I think when you look at the global migration, it's not a new problem statement. So it's been happening for quite some time, but it has been happening in bits and pieces, in pockets. So as we start looking at the ecosystem, we realize that it's a very large play. But there are a few things which are fundamentally broken. Number one, it's extremely fragmented. There are a lot of small entities who are helping people sort of in the global migration ecosystem. And that fragmentation leads to, and it gets very difficult for anybody to navigate the entire ecosystem. Now, what does that fragmentation do? It also leads to lack of trust and lack of transparency, because a lot of people who are looking at moving abroad, they do not know whether the person that they're talking to is the genuine agent who will help them ship and land them up in a new destination country. So for a lot of people, that trust was becoming a bit of a problem. Further, we realized that many times you end up paying something and you don't end up getting any results. And in the global migration space, payment is not something that is encouraged. So there's a fair bit of gap that exists when it comes to what a candidate sees and what a candidate gets. And that therefore leads to many a times poor post-arrival support also. So when a candidate lands, they don't know how to integrate themselves in the society, so on and so forth. So I think that level of fragmentation, lack of trust and lack of visibility and lack of transparency, and poor post-quality arrival support were some of the fundamental gaps that we saw. We feel it's a very large market. We feel it's a market that is bound to grow. We feel that India has a unique advantage to take a large play of the talent shortage that the world is seeing. But the problem in the industry is around fragmentation, lack of transparency, and sort of not having the right kind of post-arrival support for many of the candidates. And that's what we are trying to build. And we are trying to create an end-to-end ethical tech-enabled platform that will support a candidate from the time that they are in a classroom learning with us, the language and the skills, to the time they get deployed in the final job.
So Mayank, BorderPlus integrates skill development, language training, visa assistance and job placement. How challenging has it been to build a seamless end-to-end tech stack that works across geographies and sectors?
That's a good question, Ritwika. I think this is one of the biggest challenge. And that is the reason why there's a fair amount of fragmentation that I spoke about earlier. Because getting everything under one umbrella gets very tricky. So candidates usually or students usually go to one person for language, then go to somebody else for some skill development. Then there's a separate visa agent that they can go and talk to, and then a separate job agent who will support them in the final job. So what we saw was that it was so fragmented. Unless we bring it under one single umbrella, we won't be able to solve the problem that any individual is facing. So as we started thinking about this, we said that, look, we don't want a candidate or a student to come and start going to multiple places. And that's where we decided that we will try to bring in everything. There's a broader skill and language stack that will get you the skills, will get you the language. PB is the entire sort of immigration and job and recruitment stack. We'll help you in your visa, we'll help you in the entire process, we'll get you to land in the destination market. And also the third stack that we are building, which is around enablement, that even once you land, how do we enable you to be more productive and perhaps a lot more integrated to the society than what you otherwise would do? Because if you do so, then the retention increases and you're able to increase the longevity of the candidate who lands up in the country. So for us, it has been challenging, but because it is challenging, it is also very rewarding. And that's the fun part of building BorderPlus right now.
And while the partnership with National Skill Development Corporation is a major milestone, how are you working together to shape India's global workforce agenda?
No, so I think there are two parts of the India's sort of workforce agenda. One is how do we skill Indian talent for jobs and opportunities in India. And I think the second one, which the government is very excited about, is how do we train Indian workforce to deploy them internationally. The reason for that, Ritvika, is that because India has a large workforce and India does not have too many, how do I say, not too many natural resources available to them. Our natural resources at the end of the day is people and human beings and the talent that we have. And the government, via NSDC and various other initiatives, are working aggressively towards skilling Indian talent for jobs in India, as well as skilling Indian talents for jobs internationally. Why are they doing so? Because look, India has a large youth workforce. Our average age is 28, 29 years old, 30 years old. If you go to Germany, which is at 47-year-old, and if you go to Japan and some of the Far East countries, it goes up to as high as 50 years old as well. So India has a unique advantage of being the youngest country that can supply for world talent across the world. The second advantage is when Indians go abroad, there is a strong amount of remittance that comes back into the home country. I think last year numbers we had was about $135 billion coming back to India. And our total oil import is in the similar range. So
Sure.
it's a significant amount of money that flows back into the country. And it just changes the entire sort of landscape and the ecosystem of that individual candidate who has landed up abroad for the family that is back at home in India. So the government understands this, and that's where NSDC is promoting a fair bit of partnership and a fair bit of engagement with various private sector players to ensure that we are creating the entire ecosystem. We are creating mobility clusters. We are creating global migration pathways. And I think as BorderPlus, we are quite excited to play a small yet a meaningful role into establishing India as the global talent capital for the world. And I think if we are able to do so, a large youth population that is coming into workforce will find some very meaningful opportunities to build a long-term and sustainable and successful career.
So Mayank, with the rapid advancement of AI and automation, there's growing concern about job displacement. How do you see this trend impacting the global demand for workers? How should candidates prepare to stay agile and relevant in an AI-driven workforce?
I just maybe two parts to this question. I think it's an important one. And look, I think as AI starts getting a lot more in various industries and various sort of ecosystem, many jobs will become redundant. Now, that does not mean that jobs will suddenly disappear. There are new jobs that will come up. Now, as BorderPlus, and I'll come to your second part of the question later, but as BorderPlus, our focus are in areas like healthcare, elderly care, and skilled trades where it's human first by design. So things like construction, manufacturing, where still the human talent is required, teaching, where still the human talent is required, hospitality, where you still want to talk to somebody as human and sort of go through the entire experience. So we have chosen those domains like nursing, like elderly care, like hospitality, like retail, where human talent will be needed. And that's where we are starting off from our perspective, Ritvika. And that's where we feel that those domains aren't replaceable by AI in the near future. And that's why we feel that these are more sustainable and evergreen talent pool or talent skills that people may have. Having said that, your point is very true for a lot of white collar jobs or a lot of jobs that are in the knowledge ecosystem or the knowledge sort of economy. The job of a teller, for example, a job of a BPO executive. A lot of these jobs are getting automated and the jobs are getting redundant. And for those individuals, I think there are two things that all of them should focus on. Aggressively work towards skilling themselves in the domain of AI, understanding how AI can impact the workforce that they are in. So Ritvika, for you, if let's say you are in the journalism trade, how AI can change fundamentally how journalists should behave. And that skilling on AI becomes extremely critical. And the last one that I will mention, which is an evergreen feedback from many people, is that You should constantly learn. You should constantly unlearn. In this fast changing environment, if you're not unlearning what you have learned earlier, you won't stay up to speed with what's happening in the ecosystem. So as I say, continue to stay curious, continue to stay digital, and keep learning all the time.
It's time for a quick break here. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back to IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. Today we are in conversation with Mayank Kumar, co-founder of BorderPlus, to explore how it's bridging migration gaps and reshaping cross-border opportunities. In today's increasingly fragmented world, with rising tariff wars, shifting immigration policies and geopolitical conflicts, how is BorderPlus navigating these macroeconomic uncertainties while building cross-border talent pipelines?
No, that's a very good question because interestingly enough, we are starting up BorderPlus, which is just about 5-6 months old, at the cusp of when the entire world is going through massive conversations and turbulence around tariff, immigration policy, so on and so forth. But look, I think as a student of history and student of economics, personally myself, I feel that sometimes the demographics do not lie. And the economic force sometimes overcome a lot of these political will that people are showing in terms of immigration, etc. And what do I mean by that? Look, from a demographic perspective, India will continue to be one of the youngest geographies. India will continue to have the largest youth population in the world. And therefore, if you look at various other economies, whether you go to Japan or whether you go to Middle East for that matter, or you go to the US, UK, Germany, France, Italy, each of these markets will continue to age. And as they start aging, there is going to be labor shortage. Now, as a society or as a political fraternity, yes, you can say that, look, I don't want any immigrants coming in, but you do need them. And therefore, I think interestingly, if you go to the subtext and the fine print of what each sort of politicians are saying, I think what they're referring to is they do not want illegal migrations happening into the country. They're all open to legal migration, where you're bringing in the skills with a significant gap. So if you go and talk to any government today, each government internationally is looking at, hey, look, in the next 10-15 years, I'm going to have gaps in these, and these skill trades. And if there's a meaningful legal pathway possible, let's open that pathway up for international workforce to come in. So I don't get worried about these short-term sort of noise around migration. I feel that immigration, cross-border mobility is a long-term phenomenon. It's not going to change with 1 or 2 years. And it's a thing that can power the entire economic development and economic growth for multiple geographies and multiple economies for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Because we will need people, we will need talent. And I think India should take that as an advantageous position of actually ending up becoming the global talent capital for the world.
And how are you approaching localized operations in emerging talent hubs like Brazil and the Philippines while maintaining platform consistency?
No, so I think you're right that we are not only sourcing from India, but we are also sourcing from Brazil and we are also sourcing from Philippines. So I think all of these markets are important for us because as we go and talk to our recruitment partners in Germany, they are also seeking diversity in the candidates that are coming in. So with that mindset, what we have done is we have a very unique integrated program, which is consistent across all geographies. So the first class, the 5th class, or the 18th class, or the 30th class of each program is going to be similar, whether you are learning in India or Philippines or Brazil for that matter. So our curriculum is consistent and ensures that there's consistency across all geographies. But having said that, Ritwika, you'll understand that teaching somebody language and new skill is not as global a problem statement. So you can't teach everybody in the same manner. If you're to teach somebody in India as a kid, you need to tell them, okay, there's a distance between Mumbai and Pune is 200 kilometers. How much time and what's the speed, and you will take local contextual example. Similarly, if you go to Brazil, you will talk, okay, the distance between Brazil and Rio de Janeiro is this much, and how much time in the speed. So as you go to teaching, the examples and the context gets very localized. So we have faculty members in Philippines and in Brazil and in India that brings the local contextualization on top of the standardized curriculum that we have. And on top of that, we ensure that entire journey of the candidate is extremely transparent. It's outcome linked training. So we are matching the candidate with the employer, and all of them end up getting the similar post arrival enablement. So it's a platform approach on top of which different geographies come in. And we try to ensure that everybody gets similar experience and same experience with local contextualization done by the local teams that are there on the ground.
Right, and finally, with investors like Binny Bansal and Ritesh Agarwal backing you, what is the long-term strategic roadmap that you've outlined for BorderPlus?
I think both of them are good friends. So they have, we have known each other for a very long time. So as I was starting the new journey, I just felt that having them on board was definitely going to be helpful, and both bring in very different, and other investors bring in very different kind of a point of view and a different approach towards how to look at building business. I think Binny brings in a strong understanding of how to build a large tech-enabled platform and global sort of products from there. And Ritesh has taken the business and is now operating across different geographies. So I think for us, as we are building BorderPlus, which is a cross-border mobility platform, we do need to learn how do we build from India for the world. But for us, I think coming back to your question on long-term strategic roadmap, for BorderPlus, we are looking at building across 3 different stacks, as I mentioned. There is the language and skilling stack, there is a recruitment and immigration stack, and then there is the entire stack around enablement. We feel quite excited about the fact that our recruitment stack and our language and skilling stack are working really well. And we are looking at launching new AI-led products around our enablement stack, and which is going to sort of create unique opportunities for BorderPlus. So our long-term approach and long-term vision, Ritwika, is to become the infrastructure layer for global talent mobility. So if anybody wants to be mobile and wants to move from one country to another country, it is the BorderPlus infrastructure layer that enables a candidate to have a real-led candidate ecosystem and operating system, an employer to have an employer operating system, and the government to be able to build their own product around visa, credential, recognition, etc., such that we become the choice platform for anybody who's looking at migrating from a developing economy to more developed economy. And we create a trusted pipeline which connects the right skill talent to international opportunity, because we, Ritvika, believe that borders should not define anybody's career potential. We feel if you are skilled enough in India, your skill should be valued equally if you are in the UK or Germany, etc. So we want to create, while we are called BorderPlus, we would love to be borderless, so the talent need not have borders that restrict their entire career potential.
Mayank, thank you so much for your time. Lovely talking to you today.
Thanks, Ritvika. Thank you very much for having me.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 13. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.